If you moved toward a black hole, the first thing that would break would not be your body, it would be the sky. Not with an explosion, not with some dramatic flash, quietly, precisely, wrongly. Because a black hole does not first appear as a monster in space. It appears as a place where the universe stops looking honest. You might expect a dark circle, a cosmic hole, a patch of blackness swallowing the stars. But that is too simple, too human. What you would actually notice first is that the stars around it would stop staying where they should. The sky would begin to shift. Not wildly, not all at once. Just enough to make you stare a second longer than normal. A star near the edge would look misplaced. A pattern you thought you recognized would seem stretched. The background would feel bent, as if space itself had been pulled inward by something you could not see. And that is the first truly disturbing thing about a black hole. It does not just sit in front of the universe. It rearranges the universe around it. That is what gravity is doing there. Not simply pulling objects, not simply dragging matter, reshaping the paths of light. And once light is bent, vision is bent with it. That matters more than it sounds, because light is not decoration. Light is how reality arrives. It is how the universe reaches your eyes. So if a black hole bends light hard enough, then what you are seeing is no longer a clean picture of what is there. It is reality after being edited by gravity. That is why the view would feel so unnerving. You would not just be looking at a dangerous object. You would be looking at sight itself becoming unreliable. And the closer you drifted, the stranger that unreliability would become. The dark center would sharpen. The edge would brighten. The stars behind it, stars that should have remained hidden, would begin to leak into view around the rim. That sounds impossible, because in ordinary life, if something is behind an object, you do not see it. A wall hides what is behind it. A planet hides the stars beyond it. That is how the world works. But near a black hole, the world stops behaving in ordinary ways. Light from behind it can curve around it. Not metaphorically, literally. It can swing around the gravity well and reach you from angles that should never have worked. So the black hole would not merely block the universe. It would distort it, fold it, wrap pieces of it around a central darkness. That is when the view stops feeling like astronomy and starts feeling like reality tearing at the edges. Because what would appear in front of you is not just darkness. It is darkness surrounded by evidence that space is no longer straight. You would see arcs, crowding, compression, a glowing pressure at the boundary, as if distant stars had been pushed too close together around the rim, as though the heavens themselves were being squeezed into a narrow ring. And maybe the most unsettling part is this: the black hole would not look chaotic. It would look precise, almost elegant, too elegant, like nature had taken a clean image of the sky and bent it with perfect cruelty. Now imagine this black hole is feeding, not silent, not empty, surrounded by hot gas and falling matter, an accretion disk, glowing brighter and hotter as it spirals inward. From far away, you might think that disk would look simple, a bright, flat ring around a dark center. But close to a black hole, simple shapes do not stay simple, because the far side of that disk would not stay hidden. Its light would curve too. It would lift, wrap upward, bend downward. And suddenly, the disk would not seem to sit only beside the black hole. It would appear above it, and below it too. One structure, one disk, but seen along impossible paths. That is one of the strangest views physics allows. A flat band of matter, made to look layered, stacked, almost multiplied, simply because gravity has bent the routes along which its light can escape. So if you were really there, really watching, the black hole would not look like a hole with a ring around it. It would look like an image broken and folded by something deeper than force. A bright arc below, a bright arc above, a darkness in the middle so sharp it feels cut into space. Not messy, not blurry, severe. That is the word, severe. A black hole makes the universe look severe. It turns the sky into geometry under pressure. And every second you looked at it, you would feel the same quiet realization growing stronger. This is not just an object. This is a region where the rules of perspective have stopped protecting me. That is why people often imagine the most frightening part is the darkness. But it is not. The darkness is only the center of the experience. The real shock is what happens around it. The way background becomes foreground. The way hidden light becomes visible. The way one clean sky becomes warped into rings and lifted arcs and crowded edges. A black hole does not terrify you by looking empty. It terrifies you by making the universe look flexible, as if space were not a stage, but something that could be pulled, stretched, and folded. And that is the moment when the emotional tone of the scene would begin to change. At first, it is beautiful, then strange, then quietly unbearable. Because once your eyes realize they can no longer fully trust what they are seeing, you begin to understand what a black hole really is. Not just a dark object, not just a trap, but a place where reality arrives already distorted, a place where the sky itself becomes evidence. And yet, all of this, the bent stars, the crowded rim, the impossible arcs of light, would still only be the beginning. Because after the sky starts looking wrong, something even stranger would follow. Soon, it would not just be space that felt distorted, it would be time. If you stayed there, if you kept drifting closer, the next thing to change would not be what you saw. It would be how the universe seemed to move. And this part would be even stranger, because you would not feel broken. That is the first thing to understand. Inside your own body, nothing would scream that time had changed. Your breathing would still feel normal. A blink would still feel like a blink. A thought would still take as long as a thought takes. You would still feel like yourself. And that is exactly what makes it so unsettling. Near a black hole, you do not feel time slowing. You feel normal, while everything else begins to feel wrong. Because gravity does not only bend space, it changes the rate at which time passes. The deeper you are in a strong gravitational field, the more slowly your time flows compared with someone farther away. That is not science fiction language. That is the structure of relativity. And if you were close enough to the black hole, that difference would stop being abstract. You would begin to notice it in the outside universe, not as a number, not as a formula, as behavior, as rhythm, as mismatch. You might look outward, back toward the distant stars, the safer regions, the rest of the cosmos far beyond the black hole's grip. And at first everything might still seem calm, but slowly, subtly, something would stop lining up. A movement would seem a little too quick, a cycle a little too short, a change in the distance a little too fast to feel comfortable. And the deeper you went, the less subtle that mismatch would become. The outside universe would begin to look accelerated. Not because it had changed, because you had. Because your time and its time would no longer be keeping the same beat. That is one of the loneliest facts in physics. A black hole does not only pull you away from places, it pulls you away from shared time. The farther universe would keep moving, but it would no longer move with you. It would move ahead of you, faster and faster. And from your perspective, that might be the first emotional wound. Not terror, not pain, separation. The feeling that the rest of existence has slipped into another rhythm. That while you remain inside your own steady now, everything you left behind has started rushing forward without you. And the strange thing is, your own consciousness would not announce any of this dramatically. There would be no inner siren, no sensation of slowing, no direct feeling of your minutes thickening around you. Your pulse, your reactions, your thoughts, all of them would slow together. So inside your own frame, you would still seem perfectly ordinary, which means the abnormality would live in the contrast, in the way the external universe begins to behave, in the way distant processes start looking compressed, in the way reality out there seems to speed up while you do not. That is what makes black holes feel less like objects and more like violations of intuition. Because human beings can imagine distance, we can imagine falling, we can imagine heat, pressure, collision, even darkness. But we are not built to emotionally imagine losing synchronization with the rest of reality. And that is exactly what this would be. Now there is another layer to it. Because light does not just carry images, it carries timing, it carries energy, it carries the condition of where it has been. And deep gravity changes that too. Light climbing out of strong gravity loses energy, its wavelength stretches, its color shifts toward red, signals weaken, brightness changes. The farther in you are, the more the universe reaching you is filtered through a gravitational difference, too extreme for ordinary instinct. So this would not just be a story about motion seeming faster. It would also be a story about light arriving altered, changed in energy, changed in character, changed by the depth of the well between you and the world beyond. And now the scene becomes even more haunting, because what reaches your eyes would no longer feel like a clean window onto the cosmos. It would feel like messages coming from somewhere you no longer fully share. Messages from a universe that is still there, still real, but no longer unfolding beside you. That is the knife-edge feeling here. Not that the universe disappears, it does not. It abandons simultaneity. It stops happening with you in the same way. And the deeper you move, the clearer that becomes. People often imagine this as a grand, cinematic rush, as though the whole cosmos would instantly blur forward in one obvious spectacle. But reality is often crueler when it is quieter. It would likely begin with doubt, a subtle doubt. Was that motion too fast? Or did I imagine it? Did that light change? Or am I misreading it? Is the universe speeding up? Or have I stopped matching it? Near a black hole, those are not philosophical questions. They are physical ones. And as the gravitational difference grows, the doubt would harden into certainty. Yes, something is different. Yes, the outside world is no longer keeping time the way I am. Yes, I am falling out of step with the rest of existence. That is what relativity feels like when it stops being an idea and becomes a place. And there is a darker mirror to this, because if someone far away were looking back at you, they would not describe the scene the same way. From where they are, you would appear to slow down. Your movements would stretch. Your signals would weaken. Your clock would seem to crawl. And near the event horizon, their picture of you would become stranger still. You would seem to freeze, not in your own experience, but in theirs. Because the later light from your descent would struggle more and more to escape. It would be redshifted, dimmed, drawn thin by gravity. So to them, you would not vanish in a single clean moment. You would fade. You would darken. You would seem to hang near the edge of the black hole, as though time itself had caught in your outline. That contrast is one of the most unsettling truths in all of science. From your view, the universe speeds away. From their view, you slow toward stillness. Two descriptions, both valid within relativity, both impossible for intuition. And this is where the emotional center of the black hole experience deepens. Because by now, the black hole is no longer just a distortion in the sky. It is a distortion in belonging, a place where you and the rest of the universe stop sharing the same flow, a place where your present and the cosmos's present begin to separate. And once that separation becomes real, the question changes. It is no longer just, "What am I seeing?" or "Why does the outside world look wrong?" Now the question becomes much more intimate. What would this place actually do to me? Because not every black hole kills the same way. Some would tear you apart before you ever reach the edge. Some might let you go deeper than you would expect. And some would surround themselves with radiation so violent, so bright, so hostile, that the darkness itself would not be the first thing to end you. The first thing to end you might be the light. What would happen to you there would depend on something most people never think about. Not just whether the black hole was big or small, but how big, how active, and how close you got before physics stopped being patient. Because black holes do not all kill the same way. That is one of the first illusions to let go of. People imagine one ending, one dark mouth in space, one final fall, one clean catastrophe. But black holes are more cruel than that. They offer different kinds of death, different timings, different warnings, and sometimes almost no warning at all. Because the first thing that matters is not darkness, it is difference. The difference in gravity between one part of your body and another. If your feet are closer to the black hole than your head, then gravity pulls harder on your feet. On Earth, that difference is tiny. Near a black hole, it can become monstrous, and that difference is what turns falling into tearing. A black hole does not always crush you first. Sometimes it stretches you first, pulling harder on the nearer parts of your body, less hard on the farther parts, until your body is no longer allowed to remain one thing. This is what people call spaghettification, a strange word, almost too silly for what it describes. Because what it really means is this: gravity stops treating you like a person and starts treating you like a set of distances. Your feet and your head stop sharing the same fate. Your body stops being one decision. And once that difference becomes extreme enough, bone cannot solve it. Muscle cannot resist it. Structure cannot negotiate with it. That is the violent version, the one people usually imagine. And yes, it is real. But here is the twist. Smaller black holes can be more brutal at the edge. That sounds wrong. It feels backward. We are trained to think bigger means worse. Bigger means more violent. Bigger means less survivable. But near a black hole, size hides a reversal. A smaller black hole packs its mass into a tighter region. So by the time you get near its event horizon, the difference in pull between your feet and your head can already be enormous. Which means the tidal forces can become lethal before you ever cross the horizon. That is the disturbing part. For some black holes, the famous boundary is not the first danger. You may never reach the dramatic threshold people talk about. The destruction can begin outside it. Long before the edge, long before the darkness feels close enough to matter. And then there is the opposite case, a supermassive black hole, the kind that lives in the center of a galaxy. Millions, or billions, of times the mass of the sun. Its gravity is vast, of course it is, but its event horizon is also much larger, and that changes something important. The gradient can be gentler there, at least at first. The pull is still immense, but the difference in pull across a human body at the horizon can be much smaller than it would be near a smaller black hole. So the most chilling reversal in this story is this: a larger black hole can give you a calmer first descent. Not safe, never safe, but calmer. A quiet, supermassive black hole might let you approach the event horizon and even cross it without your body immediately announcing that you have reached the most famous boundary in the universe. No wall, no impact, no cosmic alarm, no bright line in space saying, "This is the end." Just falling. The same fall, the same bent sky, the same outside universe slipping away into a faster rhythm. And that is what makes the supermassive case so psychologically disturbing. It can feel too normal, too smooth, too quiet for what it means. Because human beings expect danger to declare itself. We expect cliffs to look sharp. We expect fatal boundaries to feel different from ordinary places. But a large black hole does not owe you that courtesy. It can let the scene remain almost serene, while the meaning of the scene becomes absolute. And that is only the gravity story. Sometimes gravity is not even the first thing that kills you. Sometimes the first killer is the environment. Because many black holes are not sitting in silence. They are feeding. Matter spirals inward. Gas, dust, plasma, shredded debris falling faster and faster as it descends. And as that matter compresses and collides, it heats, violently. The accretion disk around an active black hole can become one of the brightest places in the universe. Not bright in a beautiful, harmless way, bright in a fatal way. X-rays, gamma rays, charged particles. Radiation so intense that the word hot barely feels serious enough. So in many cases, you would not get anywhere near the horizon. The light would reach you first. That is one of the coldest truths in this whole subject. People imagine the darkness as the killer, but an active black hole can surround its darkness with such lethal brilliance that the darkness never gets the chance. Electronics would fail, biology would fail, chemistry itself would begin to lose the right to remain organized. Jets from the poles could blast outward across enormous distances. Magnetic fields could drive particles into streams of violence almost beyond language. And now the black hole becomes even more alien. Because the danger is layered. The sky lies to you. Time separates you. Gravity waits below. And the light around the darkness can already be deadly. It is not one trap. It is an entire architecture of endings. So the question, what would happen to you near a black hole, has no single answer. Near a smaller black hole, the tides may tear you apart before the horizon. Near a quiet, supermassive one, you may survive the approach far longer than intuition would expect. Near an active one, radiation may erase you before the famous edge matters at all. Different black holes, different endings, different textures of doom. And yet all of them come from the same truth. A black hole is not just a place with strong gravity. It is a place where familiar protections stop scaling. The instincts that help you understand cliffs, storms, fire, depth, impact. None of them were built for this. Now imagine the most deceptive version. A quiet, supermassive black hole. No blazing disk close enough to destroy you first. No surrounding radiation storm intense enough to erase you on approach. Just you, the bent sky, the distorted light, the outside universe racing ahead, and this immense dark region below. What would that feel like? Maybe not like impact, not at first. Maybe not even like pain. Maybe it would feel like a terrible calm. A calm so unnatural it becomes its own form of fear. Because your body might still be intact, your thoughts still clear, your breathing still your own. And that silence would be horrifying. Because it would mean the most important part of the journey does not announce itself dramatically. The event horizon of a large black hole is not a wall, not a surface, not a ring of fire. It is a limit hidden inside geometry. A threshold where all possible futures begin leaning inward. And if the black hole were massive enough, you might cross that limit before your body is torn apart. That possibility is worse than instant destruction. Instant destruction is simple. This would not be simple. This would be awareness surviving long enough to understand that return has stopped being a physical option. A fall where the first catastrophe is not pain, but knowledge. The knowledge that escape is no longer a direction, no longer a plan, no longer a thing the universe allows. And eventually, for any human body, the deeper regions would collect their price. Even in a supermassive black hole, the tidal forces grow stronger as you fall inward. The calm would not last forever. The stretching would intensify. The differences in pull would become more severe. Your structure would lose the right to remain whole. The ending would still come. Physics would still finish the sentence. But by then, the story would already have changed. Because the real shock would not be that a black hole can kill you. Almost anything in the universe can kill you. The real shock would be that it might let you keep falling long enough to understand where you are. Long enough to realize that the most famous boundary in the cosmos does not look like a boundary at all. It looks like more falling. That is why black holes are not just violent. They are merciless in a deeper way. They force you to admit that the universe does not owe you dramatic warnings. It does not owe you a visible line. It does not owe you a final sound, or a final flash, or a final feeling that says, now. And that is what makes the next step so unnerving. Because say the black hole is quiet enough, large enough, and your approach is unlucky enough that you survive everything up to the edge. Say the radiation does not destroy you first. Say the tidal forces do not tear you apart outside the horizon. Say you keep falling. Then sooner or later, you reach the threshold people name more than any other. The event horizon. The edge that is not an edge. The line that is not a line. The point of no return that may not feel like a point at all. And once you get there, you would not hit a barrier. You would not feel a door close. You would not see the universe split into before and after. And yet, everything would already be different. And then, you would cross it. Or more precisely, you would keep falling, and the crossing would happen without announcing itself. That is the first thing to understand about the event horizon. It is not a wall, not a surface, not a membrane stretched through space. It does not glow. It does not crackle. It does not push back. If you were falling through the event horizon of a large, quiet black hole, you would not slam into anything. You would not feel a sudden impact. You would not hear a sound. You would not see a gate close behind you. That is what makes it so unnerving. The most famous boundary in the universe does not behave like a boundary your body would recognize. It behaves like geometry changing its meaning around you. From the outside, people speak of the event horizon as though it were a place, a visible edge, a final border. But from your own experience, it may feel like almost nothing at all. Just more falling, the same descent, the same silence, the same body carrying the same private sense of now. And yet the truth would already be absolute. Because once you are inside the event horizon, escape is no longer difficult. It is no longer unlikely. It is no longer a matter of strength, or speed, or better technology, or one last perfect decision. Inside that boundary, escape stops being a valid future. That is the terrifying shift. Not that you are trapped the way an animal is trapped in a cage, not that a door has closed behind you, but that the structure of space-time itself has changed what away means. Outside the event horizon, there are many possible futures. You can move left, right, back, forward, closer, farther. Inside the event horizon, all allowed futures lean inward. That is one of the strangest truths general relativity offers. The center is no longer just a destination in front of you. It becomes something more like tomorrow, not a place you may reach, a place you are carried toward. And that is very hard for the human mind to sit with, because we think of direction as choice. We think of inward and outward as options. But inside a black hole, the word outward loses its old meaning. Trying to go outward is not like trying to climb a steep hill. It is more like trying to step out of time, trying to walk into a future the geometry no longer permits. That is why the event horizon matters so much. Not because it feels dramatic, because it changes what futures exist. And if you had the awareness to understand that in the moment, that understanding itself would be horrifying. Because outward would still look like a direction. Your instincts would still reach for it. Your mind would still form the word escape. But the universe would no longer agree. That is the real violence of the horizon. It does not destroy your body at the instant you cross. It destroys the possibility of return, quietly, completely, without spectacle. And from that point on, the black hole becomes even more conceptually cruel. Because the part of you that wants a sign, a clean dividing line, a visible before and after, would never get the satisfaction. You would not be able to point to a flash and say, "There, that was the moment." The crossing could happen with no more drama than the next second arriving. No rupture, no cinematic shock, just a truth becoming irreversible. And maybe that is worse. Because human beings are comforted by thresholds we can feel. A cliff edge, a slammed door, a line painted on the ground. The event horizon offers none of that. It can let you remain lucid, while the meaning of your situation changes completely. Still thinking, still seeing, still breathing, still falling. And only the physics knows that everything important is already gone. Now, from far away, someone watching you would tell a different story. To them, you never quite seem to cross. You dim near the edge, you slow, your signals stretch and redden and weaken. You appear to linger, almost frozen against the horizon. That is their reality. But yours would be different. From your point of view, you keep going. You do not freeze. You do not hang there forever. You fall inward. And this split between viewpoints is one of the reasons black holes feel so alien. Even the story of what happens refuses to stay single. The universe gives different accounts depending on where you stand, and both accounts are real in their own frame. That is not just strange, it is destabilizing, because it means there is no one simple human narrative to hold on to. Only perspective, only geometry, only laws deeper than instinct. And once you are inside, another emotional shift would begin. Outside the horizon, the black hole is a danger ahead of you. Inside it, the black hole becomes your condition. It is no longer something you are approaching. It is the world you are in. The rules have changed, and they are not changing back. Now, it is important to stay honest here, because once we start talking about the deep interior of a black hole, science becomes less certain. General relativity tells us a great deal. It tells us the horizon is real. It tells us inward futures become unavoidable. It tells us tidal forces grow stronger as you go deeper. It points toward a singularity, a place where the mathematics drives density and curvature beyond anything ordinary physics can comfortably describe. But what truly happens in the deepest core, where relativity and quantum reality must somehow meet, is not something humanity fully knows. That uncertainty matters, because a black hole is not just dangerous, it is unfinished knowledge, a place where our best theories remain powerful, but not complete. So if you kept falling, what you would carry with you is not only fear, it would also be this strange scientific loneliness, the knowledge that you are moving into a region where human understanding thins out, a region where our equations still speak, but more and more like voices in the dark. Still, some things are clear. The deeper you go, the harder the black hole becomes to survive. Even in a supermassive one, the calm at the horizon does not last forever. Tidal forces strengthen. Differences in pull grow. The geometry becomes more severe. The mercy of a smooth crossing gives way to deeper violence. So the event horizon is not the place where everything suddenly happens. It is the place where happening becomes final. That distinction is important. The horizon is not the moment of destruction. It is the moment after which destruction belongs to your future with no remaining exit. And if you could remain conscious long enough to feel that, I think the emotion would not be panic in the ordinary sense. Panic wants action. Panic wants options. This would be colder than panic. It would be the realization that options are no longer part of the structure, that the black hole has not merely overpowered you, it has outwritten the map. And yet, even here, the black hole still withholds the theatrical ending the human imagination wants. No wall, no final bell, no clean visual marker saying, "Now you are truly inside." Only the continuation of the fall, and the growing certainty that continuation is all that remains. That is why the event horizon is more disturbing than any surface could ever be. A surface would at least feel honest. A surface would admit that a crossing had occurred. The horizon does not. It lets the universe stay smooth, while making escape impossible. It lets reality keep its calm face, while removing the future you wanted most. And eventually, as you go deeper, that hidden decision begins to collect its physical cost. Because the calm crossing is only the first cruelty. After that comes the deeper one. The one waiting farther in, where the gradients grow stronger, where your body can no longer remain a single agreement, where space-time stops merely guiding you inward and begins tearing structure apart. And that is when the black hole changes again, from a place that quietly took away escape to a place that begins taking away form. And if you could somehow stand at the end of that journey and look back on what the black hole had shown you, the strangest part would not be that it was deadly. The universe is full of deadly things. Stars can burn you, planets can crush you, radiation can erase you, vacuum can kill you in silence. Death alone is not what makes a black hole different. What makes it different is what it reveals before the end. Because a black hole does not just threaten your body, it dismantles your assumptions, one by one. Quietly, completely. It shows you that space is not a passive emptiness, not a blank stage where matter drifts and light travels in straight lines. Space can bend, it can gather, it can redirect what should have remained hidden. It can be warped so deeply that even the sky stops making ordinary sense. And once you have seen that, you cannot fully return to the old idea of the universe. The black hole would teach you, first with beauty, then with discomfort, then with terror, that reality is not built the way human instinct thinks it is. We like clean pictures, clear directions, stable backgrounds, a sky that stays where it is, light that tells the truth, time that moves the same way for everyone. A black hole takes each of those comforts and removes them. The sky bends, light lies, time separates. Escape disappears without announcing the moment it became impossible. And that may be the deepest reason black holes disturb us so much. Not because they are dark, but because they are honest about how strange the universe really is. They expose something we spend most of our lives protected from. The fact that reality is not obligated to feel intuitive, not obligated to scale itself to human senses, not obligated to look fair, or simple, or even stable. Near a black hole, the universe stops translating itself into a human language. It becomes more raw, more mathematical, more indifferent. And yet, there is something almost beautiful in that indifference, because the black hole is not trying to deceive you. It only feels that way at first. The distorted sky, the bent light, the warped timing of the outside world, none of it is trickery. It is the universe telling the truth at a scale we were never built to comfortably witness. That may be the final strange gift of the black hole. It does not show you fantasy. It shows you how far reality extends beyond intuition. It shows you that a thing can be invisible and still reorder everything around it. That a boundary can be real without looking like a wall. That a fall can continue long after return has stopped being physically meaningful. That time can belong differently to different regions of the same universe. That even seeing, the most trusted of our senses, depends on paths that gravity can rewrite. And when you gather all of that together, the black hole becomes more than an object, more than a cosmic hazard, more than a famous image from astronomy. It becomes a kind of verdict, a statement built into the structure of the cosmos, a statement that says, the universe is deeper than appearance, stranger than metaphor, less solid than it looks. Because what would a black hole really let you see? Not just a dark sphere, not just a ring of fire, not just a final fall. It would let you see that the world you thought was simple was only ever simple from a safe distance. Far from extremes, reality is gentle enough to look familiar. Near a black hole, that gentleness ends, and the hidden architecture comes forward. Curvature, relativity, asymmetry. No common clock, no guaranteed way back. The closer you get, the less the universe behaves like a place built for understanding, and the more it behaves like a set of laws unfolding without concern for how they feel to you. That is why the emotional center of a black hole is not just fear, it is humility. A black hole humbles sight, it humbles time. It humbles the idea that being able to imagine something means you are ready to witness it. Because even now, knowing the equations, simulating the images, naming the horizon, measuring the light from matter spiraling around distant black holes, we are still standing outside the deepest part of the mystery. There are things we can describe, and things we can predict, and still, there are places inside the idea of a black hole where human knowledge begins to thin. That matters, because it means the black hole is not only an extreme object in nature, it is also a reminder of the edge of our understanding, a place where science is powerful, but not finished, a place where the known world does not end, but becomes more fragile. And maybe that is why black holes stay with people, not only because they are dangerous, not only because they are dramatic, but because they compress so many uncomfortable truths into one image. That light can fail to escape, that time can stop agreeing with itself, that the future can narrow, that visibility and truth are not the same thing, that the universe can remain perfectly lawful while becoming almost impossible for intuition to endure. If you had truly gone there, truly watched the stars distort, truly seen the outside universe pull away into another rhythm, truly felt the meaning of escape dissolve before any visible barrier appeared, then perhaps the final shock would not be dying there. Perhaps the final shock would be understanding, for the first time without protection, that reality was never built around human expectations, that we live most of our lives inside a calm version of the cosmos, a softened version, a version where gravity is weak enough, and speeds are low enough, and distances are small enough that the deeper structure stays politely hidden. A black hole removes that politeness. It does not create a different universe. It reveals the real one, the harsher one, the more beautiful one, the one in which space can curve like a wound, the one in which time can split into local streams, the one in which darkness is not empty, but full of consequences. And so, if someone asked what you would really see near a black hole, the most accurate answer might be this. You would see the universe stop pretending to be simple. You would see that what looks like emptiness can shape everything, that what feels solid can become uncertain, that what seems shared, a sky, a clock, a direction home, can quietly come apart. And in the end, that may be why black holes feel larger than astronomy. They are not just distant things. They are mirrors held up to the limits of human intuition. They show us where our common sense stops, where our language starts to strain, where our pictures become metaphors, and our metaphors begin to fail. And still, even then, they remain beautiful. That is the last uncomfortable truth. A black hole can be terrifying and mathematically elegant at the same time. It can represent annihilation and yet produce one of the most exquisite visions in the cosmos. Bent stars, lifted light, a dark center surrounded by impossible geometry, a wound in space framed like art. And perhaps that is the final feeling a black hole leaves behind. Not simple fear, not even despair, something quieter, awe sharpened by danger, wonder stripped of comfort. The realization that the universe is not only vast, but structurally strange in ways that exceed instinct, and still somehow remain beautiful. So maybe the most unsettling thing you would see near a black hole would not be the black hole itself. It would be your old idea of reality, failing to survive the view. Because there, at the edge of bent light and broken perspective, you would not just be looking into darkness. You would be looking at the place where human intuition runs out, and the universe continues anyway.